Hey, Seattle hockey fans, it is a game day, and we have a SQUADCAST episode with the Locked On Flyers hosts, Russ and Rachel. But before we do that, we have to talk Winter Classic. I am here in Seattle. I've got some notes, I've got some quotes, and plenty of bonus material coming your way. Let's get into it on today's Friday episode of Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are the Seattle Kraken.
Hey there, Seattle hockey fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team every single day. Erica L. Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken, and I'm coming to you live from Kraken Community Iceplex, at least for this part of the episode. I mentioned earlier in the week that we pre-recorded a conversation with Russ and Rachel of Locked On Flyers. We're going to get to that in a little bit because it's a game day. That being said, I do want to give you a few Winter Classic updates, but more importantly, I want to give you some updates from the team because they are laser focused on the Philadelphia Flyers tonight, and for good reason. Let's take you over to Dave Haxtell talking after yesterday's practice about the importance of staying diligent and not necessarily letting the hype of the Winter Classic take over. And again, this is an important game for the Seattle Kraken. We also heard Jared McCann talk about it yesterday, Jordan Eberle talk about it yesterday, that they know also that the Winter Classic game, that's a divisional matchup for them. So as much as there is a lot of fanfare around Seattle right now, and I will be covering that in a lot of our bonus material, we, just like the Seattle Kraken, are going to stay focused on Philadelphia. Here are some stats that you need to know. Overall record for the Philadelphia Flyers, including after getting a win over Vancouver last night, 18-11-4, 40 points overall on the season. The Seattle Kraken are 13-14-9. The away record for the Flyers, very good, 10-4-3. We are 6-8-3 at home. We've talked about that. We want to do better at Climate Pledge Arena, And, Vince Dunn continues to be a good scorer for us. That breakaway pass the other night was fantastic against Calgary. And then I liked what Allison Lucan said about the Philadelphia Flyers and their penalty kill. You're going to hear Russ and Rachel and I talk a little bit about that, but particularly when it comes to the Philadelphia Flyers, part of the reason that their PK is so good is because they are aggressive. And you're going to hear from Oliver Bjorkstrand at today's morning skate regarding just how sound this Flyers team is. There is a lot of respect that the Kraken locker room has for the Philadelphia Flyers, and for good reason. But even though we are going to focus on Philadelphia, I do want to give you just a little bit of a tease. If you want to watch the full rundown of me walking on the field at T-Mobile Park yesterday, then I implore you to head over to our YouTube page. Speaking of YouTube, thank you so much, Kraken fans, listeners, and especially subscribers. We have reached 1,000 plus now subscribers on YouTube. I wanted to get there this season, and we did it just in time for the Winter Classic. And I am so grateful always for your views, for your comments, and especially when you come and say hi if you see me at Kraken Community Iceplex, Climate Pledge Arena, or anywhere else. So thank you so much for that. And let me give you a little bit of a tease of something that our Locked On Kraken insiders got yesterday and that will be available for everyone later today. It's my first look at the field or the ice rink at T-Mobile Park, and a little bit of commentary about some of my favorite elements. Hey there, hockey fans. Erica L. Ayala reporting live from T-Mobile Park. That's right. I'm here in Seattle getting ready for our Winter Classic coverage, and it begins right here at the field. Now, I have some B-roll that I'm going to show you, and if you follow Locked On Kraken or Black Rose Media on TikTok, you'll get to see some of the short form video that we have. I have an interview with Everett Fitzhugh down at ice level. That's right, media got to go down to the ice level as they were preparing the ice for January 1st and the Winter Classic, hosted by the Seattle Kraken, where they play the Vegas Golden Knights. A few things that stood out to me. I got to catch up with Steve Mayer once again. We're going to have him on the podcast coming up soon here. But the roof is closed here at T-Mobile Park. I know a lot of people like Charles and RJ have been keeping you updated as to what that looks like, and it is going to likely remain closed. Steve Mayer likes that the NHL is pretty on schedule. And they feel that with the weather that has been rolling through the last few days here in Seattle, that if they had the Winter Classic at any other venue, even Lumen Field, that's not too far from here, or of course at UW, that the weather might have been a challenge. But with the closed roof, it has been amazing for the crew. And if you watched last night's broadcast, the Seattle Kraken at Calgary Flames, then you heard the amazing Allison Lucan give a great report on all of the people that you may or may not be able to see behind me that are working hard, the crew members, which includes Kraken Community Iceplex staff and Climate Pledge Arena staff, fixing and getting the ice ready for us. You'll also notice, of course, all the accoutrements, if you will. We saw the rendering, we've showed that on Locked On Kraken, but there's so many other details that go into making this something that's gonna look good, not just for the fans that are gonna be in the stands here at T-Mobile Park, but also for those of you who are gonna be watching at home. I got to walk, like I said, on the field. I came up from the visitors' dugout onto the pier, or the plank as I like to say.
I love me some finger guns, man.
Got it on camera.
You know I love me some pum 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 pums. I love me some pum pum. Same here. Yeah, I've been out of town with the team for the last week and a half, and then we had the Christmas break, so this is my first time seeing this amazing transformation that we have before us. You know what? I come here probably 15, 20 times a year for Mariners games, and to see that, yes, we're in a baseball stadium, but the rink almost looks natural. I was looking at it from the press box, and when they're done with all the installations, all the designs around us, it almost looks natural, like it's supposed to be here, and that is what amazes me, is the fact that you can make this event, this spectacle, fit inside of this larger venue and have it look so natural. I think the defensive structure for Seattle's been really good these last handful of games. You now have got 3 wins in a row in which you've scored fewer than 4 goals. 4 used to be the magic number, but now you have a 2-1 win, a 3-2 win, and a 2-1 win. So you're getting back to where you need to be. Goaltending, Joey Decord, in his last 10 starts, he's allowed 2 or fewer goals in 8 of them, going 5-3-2 in that time. So the Kraken, I think, are playing their best hockey of the season at the right time. Philly is a tough team. I think a lot of folks are writing them off a bit because they've been a little down the last few years. And then also Vegas, they've lost 4 in a row coming into our game against the Flyers tomorrow. So coming into the Winter Classic, they've been a bit down also. So it's going to be, I think, a fun game. 2 points are on the line, so it's not an exhibition game. This is going to be a game that actually counts toward the standings. We could be here in April, March, saying, man, that game in Seattle, the Winter Classic, potentially could have decided a playoff spot in this division. So I'm looking forward to it.
All right, so what you're saying is it's a must-see game one way or another.
It is a must-see game. How much time you got? Let me pull up my scroll. I can give you all the reasons why you need to get your butts down here to T-Mobile, watch it on TV, come to one of the great bars and parties that we're going to have down around the stadium. I mean, Seattle's about to show out on New Year's Day between our game and, of course, the Huskies playing at 5:45 local time here in Seattle. This entire city is about to show out for their sports teams, and hopefully we can get 2 big wins.
And are you going to show up for the media skate?
You know what? TBD. TBD. We'll see. I'm going to pack my skates just in case, but I will. I'm a tentative yes.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
And because you make Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination, I get to be here. And this is my office for the next handful of days as we get ready for the Winter Classic. But tomorrow's a game day, so we hold fast, we stay true, we always say loud and proud, let's go Kraken. I'll see you on the next episode of Locked On Kraken. Peace. All right, Seattle hockey fans, I'm not going to keep you too much longer because it is a game day, and we've got a big one against Philadelphia. Last thing I'll say in this part of the segment before we get over to my conversation with Rachel and Russ is that I want to let you know that I will be speaking to Steve Mayer once again. He's going to join the podcast. He is the Chief Content Officer at the National Hockey League. I've already asked the insiders for a few questions, and we got some good ones that I get to ask Steve, but that will be some bonus material that you'll see in the next handful of days. So we're already past 1,000 subscribers. Let's keep that uptick going and make sure that if you don't already, that you set the notifications, because I will be dropping content, whether it's shorts or just shorter videos like the Chris Drieger video, or if it is interviews and more full kind of bonus podcasts like what you'll hear from Steve Mayer. I am also, I know I gave you a little bit of a snippet from Everett Fitzhugh, but I'm going to put that interview up. And for our Locked On Kraken insiders, I got to speak to Andre Burakovsky today. If you're not already an insider, make sure you text 918-731-3154. Again, that's 918-731-3154, and you'll get all of that first before anybody else. So got a lot of goods coming your way, but without further ado, let me take you over to my conversation with Russ and Rachel, getting you ready for puck drop tonight at Climate Pledge Arena. Today's episode of Locked On Flyers and Locked On Kraken is brought to you by our friends at AG1. Now, I'm someone who moves around a lot, and so getting a morning routine that I can do even on the road is extremely important, and that's why I love AG1. All I need is 1 scoop a day, 8 ounces of water, shake that thing up, and I am ready to go, getting all kinds of nutrients, high quality ingredients that will keep me running at a high level. I especially love the travel packs. And when you go to AG1 and use our special promo code, you will get a 30-day supply of the vitamin D, the free travel packs, 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. So go to drinkag1.com/NHL network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL network and check out a great way to start your morning routine off right. Thanks as always for making Locked On a part of your daily destination, and a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts like all of us right here. Plus our national shows covering every league, yes, including the National Hockey League. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Okay, I'm super excited to do what I like to call another SQUADCAST here. Erica L. Ayala, host of Locked On Kraken, joined by Russ and Rachel from Locked On Flyers. And we are going to do battle on Friday evening at Climate Pledge Arena. And so we're going to talk about this matchup. But Rachel, you and I get to talk every other week at least. So Russ, I want to ask, how are you doing? And how are the Flyers doing at this point in the season?
I'm doing good. And yeah, the Flyers are doing better than expected. So, coming in there, they're not going to be an easy team to play against. They're a little bit more veteran laden than maybe what was advertised that was going to be happening before the season began. And right now that's the kind of team you're going to face. So you're going to face a team that, is not going to give up in any situation. They're going to play really hard. They've 2 or 3 different styles that they like to play, which is kind of odd. John Tortorella's sort of switching things up now later in his career. But, you could expect a tough game.
For sure. You mentioned Tortorella, obviously a coach that is, I'd say, polarizing, perhaps. And I do have some listeners who have questions about our head coach for you two. But Rachel, what can you say about the Torts era and how things have changed, if at all, in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I'm not sure this is exactly what he signed up for when he first became head coach of the Flyers. And that, of course, was under the Chuck Fletcher administration, which did not last a tremendous amount of time while he was there. But Danny Briere made it very clear, and Keith Jones, like the new team president, that this was going to be a rebuild on this team. And that's not something that John Tortorella is known for in terms of, managing a team in a rebuild. And especially he has a reputation of not dealing well with younger players. But, I think to a large degree, he has taken this in stride. And, I think that he has managed to create a culture change in this team, in this locker room. And that has led to the success that we've seen with this team so far. I think, there are some things that maybe we would like to see that going better in terms of prospect development and getting more guys from the Phantoms called up and those sorts of things. But I think that, certainly this team is winning a heck of a lot more this season than pretty much every prognosticator out there would have told you, including maybe us, to be honest.
Hey, listen, it certainly happens. And I think we can speak to that on the Kraken side of things. Maybe not exactly in the same direction, but for sure. I mean, every season brings its own challenges. But as it stands right now, I mean, who are some of the key players, Russ, for the Philadelphia Flyers? And, are there some maybe players that are missing or absent or maybe even just underperforming at this point in the season?
Well, right now, I mean, Travis Konechny is their best player. He's super important. Sean Couturier is a big addition to have back. He was hurt and really hurt for almost 2 years. He's been a big deal, especially on the penalty kill, on faceoffs. To get a number one center back is not, easy to do in this league. Someone like Cam Atkinson is kind of underperforming right now. And, I think he's played enough games since his neck injury that you would think he'd be okay, but just hasn't really been able to get it going lately. So he's a guy that's struggling. And some of the younger players, Tyson Forster, Bobby Brink, they have moments, but they've been struggling a bit lately too. Excuse me.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely what we've seen on the side of the Seattle Kraken. A lot of people looking to see what Matty Beniers would do after his Rookie of the Year season. And it's been on and off. I think that his kind of attention to detail has been relatively consistent. Just the results haven't been there, but that's kind of been the name of the game for the Seattle Kraken. I think it's very interesting that Dave Haxtell likes to say that we're a consistent team, but I talk about on Locked On Kraken all of the time that, consistency to me means being able to mind your gaps in the defensive zone and defend breakaways and not have your goaltender be overworked in the first period of games on a continuous basis. So those are things that mean consistency to me, but apparently not to Dave. So
something about that though, and Rachel and
that sounds very familiar.
It does. And something about that Rachel and I have talked about, and I talk about this a lot about prospects. If you want younger players to do all those things like Dave Haxtell does, it can take away from their offense. And I think maybe last year, Beniers probably, if we start looking at his offensive zone starts, defensive zone starts, we start digging into those things, he was probably shielded a little bit. He's probably not shielded a little bit now. And so now he's got to really work twice as hard. Whereas if he didn't have all of that responsibility, probably be scoring more. That's what a lot of times what happens to some of these young players.
Yeah,
that's a really great insight. And I know, Rachel, you said that sounds familiar. I do want to ask if that's reminiscent of the Haxtell era in Philadelphia. But just to stick on that point, Russ, that you're making, I know that a lot of people have wondered if maybe there's been a big focus for the Seattle Kraken across the board to win more faceoffs and to do better, even if we're not winning the faceoff, to regain possession immediately following a faceoff draw. And so Matty Beniers him being our top line center, that's a lot of responsibility on him. And I get that. Maybe that's not what he was doing. Maybe he was shielded a little bit last year. But here's kind of my thought process. Like, if you're going to be a top centerman in the National Hockey League, I think, you should be leaning into winning faceoffs. You should be leaning into playing strong, in all three zones. And so if that's a learning curve that he has to get over in this season, I personally, and I think anyone that listens to Locked On Kraken knows I'm a defense first person. So I'm okay if that means that the offense is not as highlight worthy as it was last year. That being said, I think that there are things that the Seattle Kraken have to figure out as far as unlocking the offense when it comes to particular players. And I think we've leaned too much on expecting Andre Burakovsky to be healthy. He's already been injured twice this year, and we lost him right before our playoff run last year. So that's the balancing act that you have to kind of figure out, that I think the Seattle Kraken have to figure out when it comes to offensive production for a player like Matty Beniers, who also plays a very integral position on the ice.
Yeah, so, Burakovsky, he did have that problem in Washington too. The thing about Beniers is, look, he's fast as far as faceoffs, has good hands. His strength isn't where it's going to be in 2 years yet. So again, it's a little bit unreasonable for Dave Haxtell to think he's going to be like, I don't know, a 55% faceoff guy. Just because you're a number one center, you still got to take the other things into account. His man strength's not there yet. So whoever's on his line should really be making up the slack. So like if he ties him up, that's the guy that should be going in and stealing the puck. So I would tend to look at those guys a little more.
Yeah,
I think that's
going up against Sean Couturier is going to be a good learning experience for him as far as taking faceoffs go. I know the Flyers overall are not very good at faceoffs, but Sean Couturier tends to be pretty solid at them. And with that veteran experience, like, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and I think, Rachel, that is a huge point right there. And we've been talking a lot about Matty Beniers, but there have been so many injuries to some of our more veteran players that you also have players like Ty Cartier stepping up. You have players like Devin Shore. We've had so many players going back and forth, just trying to fill and plug holes. Pierre-Edouard Bellemare is not in the lineup right now.
I know. I'm so bummed. He's like one of the top ex-Flyers out there.
He's a fun guy. Nice guy.
Yeah, it looks like will definitely miss this game, but also not on track to be back until after the Winter Classic. So that's unfortunate, because he wouldn't be skating on a lake, though. So I don't know how excited he was for the Winter Classic.
You have to think about this too, Erica. In the West, there's a lot of really great big centermen, bigger than Beniers, guys like Scheifele. There's a lot of tough guys that he has to go up against. That you don't just get better in a year or two against those kinds of guys. You just don't.
Yeah, that's all very, very true. And that's where Beniers, he's known that since he's come on board. I do think that Ty Cartier, as far as rookies, even Riker Evans, who's been able to find his way into the lineup, they've been doing a lot better managing that physicality. But we also know that overall,
guys too, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and overall, you don't have to be a rookie on the Kraken to get bullied, and that's a little bit of just what some people wonder is missing from our game is being able to be physical. I think there's being physical within the confines of the game, and then there, of course, is defending your teammates. And I think that we're below the bar when it comes to both. Coming from women's hockey, I don't necessarily need dropping the gloves. I think it's a little ridiculous in an age where across sports overall we're asking people to speed up the game. But I do think overall we need to find ways to put a little more meat on our bones. Matty Beniers, of course, being chief among them. But like I said, Rachel and Russ, I do want to ask you both a little bit more about Dave Haxtell. And I'm sure that you have some questions for the Kraken. I certainly have questions about the Kraken and what we did last year and if we can do it again this year.
Right. And we will get to all of that coming up next. You know that feeling when your favorite Flyers, or I guess Kraken player, scores a hat trick. If you want to get that feeling and win 100 times your money, play daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper app. As the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network, Sleeper is our top choice for your daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey. You can also play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, MLB when it's in season, and college football on Sleeper, and entries can be made in under a minute. You've got elite players like Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, and Austin Matthews, plus new guys like Connor Bedard. All you need to do is make more or less picks on stats for these stars. You choose from stats like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail those picks so you can start winning big. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Of course, you can catch the Flyers versus Kraken at 10 p.m. Eastern. That's 7 p.m. Pacific. Catch every second of the hometown broadcast you want with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search for Flyers or Kraken. So Dave Haxtell, I guess, is the elephant in the room, so to speak here. Yeah, I think that he had a rough go of it in his first head coaching job in the NHL. And I think every coach that has, that moves, especially from college to the NHL, I think that's a much bigger jump than a lot of people, really consider. And so he did have some success in Philadelphia, but when it went south, it really went south, and it went south quickly, and he just couldn't figure it out. I think spending time in Toronto as an assistant really helped him. And I think, he has had some success in Seattle, but would love your take on that as well in terms of how you think he's doing in a sophomore year.
I think that and specifically, I just want to shout out the everydayers and OGers on Locked On Kraken, because they wanted me specifically to ask you about your thoughts on. Let me pull up the comment here. Quote: "If you miss the Jack Adams Award nominee, Dave Haxtell." So on that note, I think that we saw the potential. I think we saw what I talk about on the Locked On Kraken podcast a lot as the long-term vision. I think it came ahead of schedule. And what we're seeing this year
also familiar.
Right. And so what we're seeing this year is how can we sustain that? And I will be honest, I've probably gotten the closest that I personally have been to wanting to throw all criticism to Dave Haxtell. And then I started thinking about it a little bit more. And I'm at this point right now, and we've met some success. We can't seem to collect more than 2 wins in a row, which I think is going to be a challenge down the line for us. But I do think that some of the challenges that we're having, I mentioned the injuries already on this SQUADCAST episode. That's massive. And what I say a lot on the Locked On Kraken podcast is you have to be ready for injuries in professional sports. They are going to happen. It's inevitable. You are never going to get through a season 100% healthy. So that leads me to not putting so much heat on Dave, but instead wondering if Ron Francis and the rest of the front office are being a little bit too conservative when it comes to what we're doing at free agency, at the trade deadline, and even throughout the season. For example, we mentioned Matty Beniers a lot in the last segment. Getting Tomas Tatar in a trade has changed what that top line of Beniers and Eberle, they've been the two mainstays. And then getting someone like Tatar who knows how to crash the net, who can use, he's not the biggest guy in the world, just like the rest of our roster, but he's effective and he knows how to use his body in situations. Those things, to me, Dave is inheriting a roster. I'm sure he speaks to everyone else at the front office, but at the end of the day, the sustainability piece and some of the issues that we're having in such an injury-laden season, to me, point to a little bit more needs to be done at the front office level. And Dave Haxtell is going to do what he can do to get the team where it needs to be. But also a little bit of the lackluster performance for the Kraken, if we're being honest, I think some of that is on the players because they have been set up for success, especially out the gate. And if you're not ready to perform, there's nothing Dave and the rest of the coaches can do about that.
Yeah, so a question that I have for you, and this is like a Ron Francis-y kind of question, because since the Kraken have been around, they have not really tried to get that number one defenseman in draft, in trade, in anything. They had Giordano for that short time. And right now, I like Vince Dunn, but he's not a number one defenseman. I think we all know that. So when you go up against some of those tougher teams and you watch these games, Erica, how much faith do you have in Vince Dunn and Adam Larson to kind of, shut down, I don't know, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, guys, you could talk all around the league, Elias Pettersson, all those kinds of guys.
Wow, this is a great question. And for anyone watching on YouTube, you saw my reaction when Russ brought up top tier defensemen, because I think you are right. Vince Dunn and Adam Larson, I think, are a great combination because Vince Dunn continues to push himself and push the envelope when it comes to his being able to jump up in the offense. And he's very effective. He's our leading, our points leader right now going into Friday's game. So he's very effective there. Adam Larson drove me crazy in season 1, but I'm understanding his game a little bit more. And I think that he does above serviceable. I think he's slightly above average, especially when you really look at, as I do, really being able to nullify opportunities. That's what a good defender does, in my opinion, and it doesn't get noticed. If a good defender is doing their job, you're not noticing them at all. I think he's done a better job being that for us. I think he's one of our smoothest defenders. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes, and he's able to clean up other things. That being said, the Seattle Kraken, the way we are built, because we don't have, I would argue, a true top defenseman who can handle some of the offensive power you're talking about, we've had to do things by committee. And that's how our team is built, to do things by committee. And that's why players like Brian Dumoulin or Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, who we've already talked about, they know that when they come to the Seattle Kraken, that the role that they have, there's more to be done because everyone has to contribute for the system to work, for the team to be successful. And again, there have been times this season where it looks to me like there have been blown assignments, like there has been lethargy. There are just guys that are not stepping on the ice at the 20-minute mark on the clock in the first period, ready to go. And so for me, I've been clamoring that we need more on the defensive side for years now. For years.
What about the draft? It doesn't seem like they've even identified. Look, I like Dragicevic, but he's not going to be a top pairing defenseman. Like, it just doesn't seem like they're even trying in the draft to get that.
I would agree with you, Russ. I would agree. I mean, again, Riker is doing great for us right now. And, he's one of our prospects that came through. But to your point, we've now had a couple of drafts and there hasn't been an emphasis there. And I think, honestly, the defensive side of things, or D-men, I should say, and goaltending go hand in hand. And on the goaltending side, we're, I think, a little bit handcuffed in a few different ways by the contracts that we gave to Drieger and Grubauer, by the injuries that Drieger and Grubauer have had, and also by the fact now that Joey Daccord, and this is a good problem to have, but Joey Daccord is really stepping up for the Seattle Kraken and making a case for himself to be an NHL caliber goalie. And so if they want to, kind of futz around and not figure out who they want to just choose between goalie number 1, goalie number 2, goalie number 3, we run a really big risk of losing Joey Daccord right before he really breaks through. And that, I think, would just be detrimental to what the Seattle Kraken are trying to do in the long run.
Yeah, I think that's very, very possible. I do want to talk about the Winter Classic, which is coming up for the Kraken, but I do want to get one other thing in first, because there's a similarity between the Flyers and the Kraken in that they're really good at getting scoring chances, really good at getting high danger chances, right? Every game after game, the averages are high, but both the Flyers and the Kraken are below 3 goals for per game. The Kraken are at 2.69. The Flyers are a little higher than that, just under the 3-goal mark at 2.97. But what do you think the issue is there on the Kraken side?
I think the high danger chances have started to increase. I mentioned Tomas Tatar before Jaden Schwartz got injured. You saw that there was an emphasis to have him as a net front presence. Not a big guy, but scrappy. We lost, unfortunately, in my opinion, Ryan Donato, who can mix it up and really get garbage goals. What I think for us is missing is really owning the slot. On Locked On Kraken, we look at the heat maps after almost every game, sometimes before. And what we see is that Joey Daccord, Philip Grubauer, whoever's in net for us, they're having to stop pucks very deep into the slot, right in front of the crease. And the Seattle Kraken overwhelmingly, and again, the trend is starting to tilt, but overwhelmingly in the beginning of the season, we were not getting to those areas. We were not shooting in those areas, and we were being pushed out and deep and had to create offense from distance. So I love that we're starting to see more of that. But for me, to answer your question, Rachel, that's been what has limited our scoring output. And again, I talked about this in the first segment, but the consistency, I just don't think that it's really been there. And we give more breakaway opportunities than we get. And so for me, that's been the issue. But I mean, does that sound familiar for Flyers, or what do you think is keeping you below 3 goals per game?
I mean, we don't have a net front presence either. So right. I think there's none.
It's fleeting at best.
Yeah, we always talk we haven't had a good net front presence on the Flyers since Wayne Simmons, and that is not a lie.
That's true.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you got to get dirty for it. And again, I talked about the physicality, but that just seems to be missing that bite. I think Yanni Gourde arguably is one of the most feisty players that we have. He's also, one of the smaller players that we have. But his line with Bjorkstrand and oh my goodness, why am I blanking right now? Ellie Tolvanen, with Bjorkstrand and Tolvanen, they from training camp, that was the line that I was looking to see. And once again, our third and fourth line, the quote unquote bottom 6 for the Seattle Kraken have been the most consistent for us.
That's a Dave Haxtell trade. No offense. Dave Haxtell gets the most out of those bottom 6. He is that guy.
mean, and that is what created even the possibility for the Kraken to make the playoffs, let alone get to the second round. I mean, that is huge. And that's that by committee. That's that, every man doing his job. But when anyone is off their game, there's not enough or not a player in the right position for the Kraken to put the team on their back. We just don't have that. Unless they're the goalie. And if Joey Daccord would start shooting on net, I'd be happy with them.
That's funny. So the Winter Classic is around the corner. This game against the Flyers is the last game before the Winter Classic. How has the Road to the Winter Classic documentary stuff been going behind the scenes? And then is this the game against the Flyers to fine tune to get ready for it? How much pressure is there on the Kraken?
Yeah, that last or the middle question that you said, is this the game to get ready? I think for me, putting aside the Winter Classic and just kind of the event that it is, it's another game. It's a game against a Pacific Division opponent. It's a game against a team that we have not played particularly well against. So I think this game against the Flyers, especially coming off of how we played in California against LA and Anaheim, this is where the Seattle Kraken can really step into consistency that yields results. Because I guess what Dave is trying to say is that he feels his team, he feels the Kraken are consistent, but that the results just haven't fallen in their favor. I think that's a little kinder than I personally would be. Maybe it's the New Yorker in me. I don't know. But I hear what he's saying. And this is a game against the Flyers that will test if the Seattle Kraken have truly leveled up their game enough to compete with a team that is solid. I mean, you look at where the Flyers are in the Metro Division, you look at what you've been able to do as far as getting points up on the board, so to speak, as far as the standings are concerned. These are the types of games that the Seattle Kraken, regardless of if it's Winter Classic time, regardless of whatever else is happening, need to get these wins. So that's how I'm looking at this game against the Flyers as far as preparation goes. Now, when it comes to the excitement of, again, the event, Seattle is super excited about this. I mean, the jersey reveal was very strange. Like the Utah Jazz, I don't know who thought that.
I didn't get that whole thing.
That was so strange. But we got over that little speed bump and people love the unis. The field rendering looks great. We've been able to see it come together piece by piece in Seattle. Everything from even the media side of things and what we're going to be able to do in Seattle, because I will be at the Winter Classic game. It looks like it's top notch. And that's always what Seattle as a franchise has been able to do really well. And now I think it's a matter of, against the Flyers, can we start getting that consistency? Can we start really leveling up the game so that when we do have these big event games, Winter Classic, I don't know if Stadium Series is in the works, or the big one, the playoffs, that we're ready for all of the hype and all of this, all of the extra.
One thing to add, because you had mentioned,
yeah.
So for all my years of covering a bunch of Winter Classics and outdoor games, especially the Winter Classic, the emphasis on that is like having 3 home games. And it's never in your park, right? Because it's in T-Mobile, which is a great park, but it's not in your home arena. You're asking now, everybody's getting asked for 20, 30 tickets a game. Your family is now at every practice. Like, everything you do is being watched on TV. And I'm just saying, watch the players, because you'll find out which ones maybe it's a little too much for, if at all. But sometimes it becomes that, and they can actually get on a losing streak if they don't win that game because of the emphasis, especially on the home team. They have all the pressure on them.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think, again, it's something that we started to see a little bit, even just with the fatigue of the grind that the playoffs can take on you. I don't think that everyone on the Kraken was completely ready for that. Even as much as we have guys, I mentioned Yanni Gourde, we have players like Brian Dumoulin, who I think he said has played in 7 Winter Classics. These are the times where those guys and their experience,
at least 3. And probably 4 or 5 outdoor games overall. Yeah. Right.
Exactly. So, how much does their experience trickle down to a Will Borgen, who's never played an outdoor game, a Matty Beniers, who's never played an NHL outdoor game, a Riker Evans, how much can they realistically take their experience and kind of like, I don't know, like supersonic impart it on them. There's not much you can do. You just have to go through it. And so that's another really good point, Russ, that you make, that this is an opportunity for the Seattle Kraken to be center stage in the NHL, hosting as a city at least. And there's a little bit extra that you have to do, extra media and stuff. I did think, though, and I've never been to a Winter Classic myself, but I thought it was interesting that Brian Dumoulin mentioned that in some ways it's not a necessarily good or bad thing, but he mentioned that it's interesting to play a Winter Classic game or an outdoor game because the crowd and the energy and sometimes the tension that's created by fans banging on the glass, it's not really there. So you have to also adjust to that. It's a little bit more intimate. You're really hearing everything that your teammates and your opponent is saying on the ice, which creates a whole nother experience as well.
True.
So I think it should be an interesting game between the Flyers and the Kraken. Very much looking forward to it. Erica, any final words, and where can people find you?
I mean, hey, we'll see. This is still very much a Kraken team that is learning how to win instead of trying not to lose, as Jordan Eberle says all of the time. And so I'm actually excited to see how they're going to fare, because you've mentioned it both as we've talked through this SQUADCAST. But this is a team. Maybe it's is it sustainable? Who knows? But the matter or the fact of the matter is that you're playing pretty solid hockey right now. The results have been there, and these are the kinds of tests that the Seattle Kraken need to show if they're going to be a legit team and if they can make a push to the playoffs. So I'm excited. I don't usually do like scoreline predictions, but I'll say it this way. The Seattle Kraken will win against the Flyers if they really continue to focus on scoring first and maintaining a lead. That was our Achilles heel early on, and the numbers don't lie. Whether it's if we're behind first period, second period, or going into the third, whatever the case is, if we're behind, we're probably losing. So I want to see us get out early because that's what it's going to require. And then we have to have this young
if you go
team.
2 goals down in an outdoor game, it's rough. It's hard to come back.
Exactly. It's hard. Well, in any game. I mean, for the Kraken, we don't need it to be an
outdoor
game.
But outdoor is even harder because it takes a little more to get the offense going. It does.
Yeah, I could see that. Again, kind of the atmosphere is totally different. So for me, the Kraken will win the game if they really focus on getting ahead of the game, not having to chase the game, instead having, in this case, the Flyers chase them, and they set the cadence and the pace of the game.
Well,
and you can find me at
when they. Oh yeah. Yeah, the Flyers are pretty good at winning when they score first, and they've been pretty successful on the road, and this Western road trip is a huge deal for them. So it should be, a really good unstoppable force, immovable object kind of game, and I'm looking forward to it. And then Russ, where can people find you?
Yeah, they can find me on Twitter at Sportsology, sportsology.com, NHLDraftBuzz.com.
Excellent. And I'm Rachel Donner, and I'm at rmiriam in a lot of places as well. So good SQUADCAST, and we'll catch y'all on the flip side.
As always, Kraken fans, I want to thank you for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. I know that you are listening to us on your favorite podcast app. Maybe you're watching on YouTube. Hi, YouTubers. Or you're listening on the Sirius SXM app, where you can also listen to tonight's Kraken game if you so choose. I am so grateful. It has been a joy to grow this community from scratch, and back here with the Seattle Kraken Media Corps, who are always just so lovely. It's a great group, and I'm so excited that we all of us get to bring you the first ever Winter Classic as part of the National Hockey League here in the city of Seattle. So we're going to have, again, a lot of bonus content, but you know how we do every day. Make sure you're kind to yourself, and please be kind to one another. And tonight we say loud and proud, hold fast, stay true, and let's go Kraken. I'll see you on the next regular episode, or maybe over on YouTube and social media for our bonus content. Peace out, everybody.